Hey Wilson Warrior friends, Mrs. Armstrong here, and today I want to take some time to read to you from one of my all-time favorite books, Night of the Twisters by Ivy Ruckman. Before I do any read alouds with you guys, I do want to give a thank you to HarperCollins Publishing and to my author, Ivy Ruckman, for giving us permission to do read alouds online with our students now that we're in this era of continuous learning. And they've loosened a little bit of their copyright rules to allow us to share books with each of you online. So thank you to HarperCollins and to Ivy Ruckman. A little bit of background information about our story. Night of the Twisters is a historical fiction book. Historical in the fact that our story is set in actual events that happened in Grand Island, Nebraska on June 3rd, 1980, when 7 different tornadoes touched down within about a 3-hour period in Grand Island. Our characters are fictional, though. They were made up from Ivy Ruckman's imagination. And so we consider it the genre of historical fiction. I also love reading this book out loud. I have read this book every single year that I've been in education, and this is my 25th year. So I've read this book multiple times, and it is always popular with the kids for a lot of different reasons, I think. We have 2 main characters, a boy and a girl, which I think is always good when I'm reading to a mixed group of people. It has a lot of action. Lots of things taking place all at once that really leave you on the edge of your seat. So it is a really fun book to read out loud. But I kind of have a personal connection to this book, which is one of the main reasons why I like to read it every year. I lived in Grand Island, Nebraska on June 3rd, 1980. I was just a few weeks shy of my 8th birthday at that point in time. And the house that we lived in was just about 6 or 7 houses away from one of the tornadoes that touched down that night. We were very fortunate. Our house really didn't have any tornado damage. We didn't have any broken windows. We didn't have any shingles that were ripped off. We really were very lucky. The worst thing that we had was some hail damage to a tin shed that we had in our backyard, and lots of debris in our yard, broken tree limbs and things like that had been blown around the night before. So we were very, very fortunate. But I really enjoy reading this book because of that connection. So let's go ahead and get started. The book starts off with a newspaper clipping that was published the morning after the tornadoes. Grand Island, Nebraska, June 4th. A string of 7 tornadoes devastated this central Nebraska city last night, killing 4 people and injuring 134. Initial reports say that 5 people were killed, and one county official said this morning that she thought more than 30 bodies had been found. The city was battered by tornadoes over a 3-hour period. When they were over, a 6-block wide swath along Grand Island's 2 main streets was devastated. A federal emergency management administration said that 513 homes and 60 businesses had been destroyed. In addition, 450 homes and 15 businesses were damaged. Radar indicated that the tornadoes that hit Grand Island were touched off by a thunderstorm cell at least 35 miles wide that formed shortly before 8 p.m. This was published early in the morning on June the 4th. There had only been a few daylight hours at this point. The numbers changed drastically after they were able to go out and do some actual search and rescue. That one of the comments in this article was that they thought there might be more than 30 bodies that were found. When it was officially all tallied up, there was only 3 people that were killed. Any loss of life is devastating, but to only have 3 people lose their life when there were 7 tornadoes in one night is pretty amazing. Our next chapter is called As Told by Dan Hatch. When I was a little kid, I thought a red letter day was when you got a red letter in the mailbox. Pretty dumb, huh? Well, it finally dawned on me that a red letter day is when something terrific happens, something wonderful. Usually something unexpected. Take that April Saturday when I won $500 in cash and merchandise. Now that was a red letter day if I'd ever saw one. But who would have guessed? A plain open space on the calendar. That day had started out like any other, with frosted flakes for breakfast and Mom posting jobs on the kitchen corkboard. Don't forget to change the kitty litter, Dan, she had said, just as she did every Saturday for as long as I can remember. By noon of April 19th, I had entered the Dairy Queen bike race because my friend Arthur dared me to. And by 2 o'clock, I was crossing the finish line 79th with only 2 cyclists behind me. Who would have guessed that a beginner like me would win the racer's raffle afterwards? Besides the $100 from Grand Island, the Thrift and Loan, I won a slick new racing bike, a Schwinn Voyager 26 pounds with side pole brakes and a jet black frame. The prize also included a racing helmet, an aluminum bike pump, and 3 packages of Fruit of the Loom underwear, which I gave to Arthur because he wears a men's small. Now, that's the kind of day that ought to have a tag on it. It could read, "This is a red letter day. Number 1, dress appropriately. Number 2, practice looking humble. And number 3, comb your hair in case of photographers." Well, now that I'm older and more experienced, I know that there are black letter days too, as well as the red ones. Those biggies, those real blockbusters that mess up your life, they're not marked on the calendar either. You never know ahead of time when you're going to have one of those. If I had my way, if I was in charge of the world, as my dad sometimes says, the black letter days would be announced for sure. I thought about this a lot. What if God or somebody actually did send out doomsday letters via the postal service? Wouldn't that be something? Say you wake up one nice regular day, everybody's in a good mood, a perfumey breeze is swinging in from the south, la-di-da, and then you go out to bring in the mail. "What's this?" you gasp, staring at a black envelope in your hands. You rip it open, trembling all the way to your elbows. "Furnace explosion planned," it says, 2 o'clock today. Or maybe head-on collision with a Peterbilt truck, Washington and 4th Street. Or tornado on Tuesday. If people got notices like that in advance, it would save a lot of trouble and grief. It's those black surprises that get you, those things that people call acts of God because they have to blame somebody. My all-time worst black letter day was June 3rd of last summer. There was no notices mailed on that occasion, for sure, and there was no indications at all. 20% probability of thunderstorms towards evening was what the local weatherman had said in the morning. So what's new? My mom talked back to him, poking another spoonful of cereal into my baby brother's smiling mouth. To tell you the truth, the weather was the last thing on my mind. Arthur and I had big plans for that Tuesday. Craft class first at my Aunt Goldie's place, a couple of hot burritos at Taco John's after, and later a bike hike out to the Platte River to go swimming at Mormon Island. According to my Grandpa Hatch, the best swimming in south central Nebraska exists right there, where the big island separates the Platte. So with school out for good, Arthur and I were planning on getting in on some of it. And unless you count the long cirrus clouds that were strung across the morning sky, as Arthur and I pedaled off to Aunt Goldie's, there was no warning at all that day in June. None. Thanks for joining me for the first chapter in Night of the Twisters. Our next chapter is titled 5 o'clock. Ivy Ruckman has titled her chapters by time of day to kind of help give us an idea as a reader as to whether we're getting close to the time when the tornadoes will touch down. Very first tornadoes touch down at close to 9 o'clock that night. So with the titles of 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock, we'll definitely have an idea as when we're getting close to some of the big action. Thanks for joining me. I'll see you soon.